Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the YS channel. Your home for all things cult movies, cult classics, obscure movies, even just generally popular ones. Whatever it is your taste is, we'll probably discuss it and go over it. Anyway, you just want to do like a re-review or Redux review on one of the previous movies that we sat through. One of our earlier reviews was for Transformers the movie 1986, the original Transformers movie. So that one is obviously the animated version that's based off the television series of the time. And it's one of our all-time favorite movies. Now, is it how would you say, a solid movie? How would you say, complicated but enthralling, plot? It does have issues with consistency and other little things, and it's still a giant advertisement for fucking toys. But all that shit out of the way, this is one of the few movies I can say growing up, when I sat there and watched it for the first time, I was blown away. It's like, it has that old school retro anime style to it, which, it was animated, but I want to say by Toei Studios, the ones that did the animation, or the animation was outsourced to them. So, and the animation in the movie is a lot better than your standard episode of the show back in the early 80s. I'll just say that in case you're a fan of the show and the movie, you'll see the difference in quality, which again is expected since it's a fucking movie. With that said, for the most part, the animation itself is pretty, it's pretty solid, and at other points it's breathtaking. Like the action scenes, the fighting scenes, even just the background art. I really run out of good things to say about it. The only real negative, again, I can throw at it is they really let the color orange. But with that said, the fight scene, especially the one where they're in Autobot City and the Decepticons are just raiding it and just tearing it to pieces. That's always a highlight of the movie, right? Especially the final confrontation between Optimus Prime and Megatron. For the most part, it was well animated, and again, it was meant to be one of the selling points of the movie. And then the fight did deliver, and then, of course, when you talk about this movie, you can't talk about this movie and not talk about the fucking soundtrack. The soundtrack is really, it's like the chef's kiss to this movie. It's like a really hard rock, hair metal heavy soundtrack, which again, what do you expect from a movie in the fucking 80s, right? But this one delivers, man. You got Stan Bush, he provides the songs Dare, and then of course the Transformers national anthem song, The Touch, which is really a goddamn good song, regardless if you want to associate it with just the Transformers franchise or not. It's a really good song. And then those other groups out there, they had Weird Al provide a song, and then the guy that did the soundtrack for, I know he did it for Rocky 4. I'm not sure if he did it for Rocky 3. I think his name's Vincent DiCola. He also does a lot of the soundtrack, or the ambient soundtrack that you hear throughout a lot of the movie, a lot of the computer technical sounding music you'll hear. The scene where this is after the death of Optimus Prime, and Megatron gets reformatted into the Galvatron, and then the newly reformatted Decepticons come back to finish off the Autobots. They take off in the shuttle and they're chased through space. So that music you hear during that chase is that's him. And then there's a group called Kick-Axe, A-X-E, Kick-Axe. I do forget if they actually went by a different name, but that is definitely the original name of that group. And you get the songs Hunger, and what's the never song? I forget the name of it. Hunger is always a popular choice. Actually, scratch that. The group is credited as Spectre General in the movie, but their original name was Kick-Axe. But, like, the scene where they did crash land on that weird water planet. Do you think it has the fucking, like, Sharkticons or whatever? You hear that song? And then they have another song called Nothing's Gonna Stop Us, and, just kick-ass, just musical soundtrack to that movie. And honestly, the music kicks in usually just at the right moment. Like, the action's about to fucking take off. And this movie has action, man. Like, again, near the start of the movie, you have the final confrontation between Megatron and Optimus Prime. Before that point, there's a scene where the Decepticons ambush the Autobots, like, space shuttle thing, as they're en route to Earth to make, like, a critical delivery. They are thinking it's going to turn the tide in the war. And the Decepticons are like, nah, fuck you. And then for a kid's animated show or movie based off a kid's animated show, it's a pretty intense spectacle. Because for the first time, you actually see the robots or the Transformer characters themselves die. And I want to say, again, this is for a PG young kids movie. It's pretty graphic death for a lot of them. Like, they're getting blasted by Megatron and Starscream and the Constructicons. And then, like, their bodies start smoking and they just turn gray and they just collapse there on the spot. And then one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie is after the slaughter is complete, right? Megatron walks over to, like, the control panels of the shuttle. He's having a talk with Starscream, calls him an idiot or whatever, and then he lets them know their evil plan is to invade the Autobot detection system and then destroy their city, therefore vanquishing them forever. And then one of the Autobots, fan favorite Ironhide, he was on the shuttle and he survived his wounds. And there's a scene, like, he's, like, on the ground, he's just wrapping his hands around Megatron's, like, foot. And he's like, no! And then Megatron, he just cracks out this fucking sadistic smirk, and he's like, such heroic nonsense. And he just blows his head off. End of him, right? And then there's another sequence. This is after Megatron is reformatted into Galvatron. And as far as I'm concerned, they're the same character, even though sometimes they don't make that necessarily clear if Galvatron remembers who he was. Other times he does, so it kind of, like, contradicts itself. But again, there's a scene where, he gets his marching orders from Unicron, who's the actual big bad villain in the movie. The planet-sized transformer who's evil, and he destroys other planets for the fucking fun of it. He gives Galvatron marching orders, collect the Autobots' matrix of leadership, which is like the super ultra weapon that Optimus Prime has apparently had with him the entire time of the show. And he can open up and unleash, like, this energy force that will vanquish pretty much anything that it's directed to vanquish. But anyhow, he's doing anything to stop him. So he gives them the marching orders to retrieve it. And then he makes a pit stop on Cybertron. They get revenge on Starscream for dumping him in space while he was still Megatron, because with the fight with Optimus Prime, he got his ass whooped, right? He was barely clinging to life as it was. So he turns into his space cannon, whatever it is, and he disintegrates fucking Starscream, man. It's a pretty epic scene. And again, you gotta see it animated. They experience the full effect of it. But, basically Starscream's like, Megatron, is that you? And he's like, here's a hint, motherfucker. And then they just blast him, full blast, and it basically just turns him to dust. And that's, like, one of the most badass ways to introduce your new character or new toy, to the rest of the audience. In case you weren't sold on this guy being the badass evil leader that Megatron was, that leaves no question. So basically, he regains control of the Decepticon forces, and then the movie plays out pretty much like the rest of the standard episode of the TV show would play out. Autobots versus Decepticons, and Autobots will come out on top. But again, they're all in a lot of more intense action, really well animated fight scenes throughout the movie. They do still some of the scenes are graphic for a kid's cartoon movie. There's a scene where they're inside Unicron, and earlier in the movie, he attacks Cybertron and destroys one of the moon bases that circles or orbits Cybertron. and he's able to capture the Autobots that are there, which are Jazz, Bumblebee, and then I guess the father character, Spike, who was like the main kid character in the show. And then, of course, the movie actually takes place like 20 years ahead, or nearly 20 years after the events of like the first couple seasons of the show. So he's an adult now, and he has this kid named Daniel. Anyhow, the Autobots that were able to infiltrate Unicron come to this area where it's like all the people he swallows when he like devours planets, the ones that survive or whatever, were captured, and they get dumped into like an acid pit. And you see them getting dumped in there and just getting fucking annihilated, man. You know, just like, fuck. Movie doesn't play around. You know, but overall, you know, it's your basic A to B movie. Really well animated, especially for like the anime like style at the time. And kick-ass soundtrack, you know. I mean, if you're a fan of the franchise, you already know all of this. You know, it's pretty much a cult classic for us fans of the franchise. Even for casual viewers, you know, like, you're just into the intense action. Like, you got no history, you have no understanding of the lore prior to this. You'll just sit there like, fuck, that was intense. You know, it's unfortunate that they couldn't like market this movie better or pump more into it. It really did have the ability to become like an 80s, you know, animated classic. And it's kind of low-key is, but it really could have been more. But it is what it is. You know, again, there are plot inconsistencies and issues related to like the continuity of the TV show, but overall, when you get around all that, you know, it does suck you in, and it does, for the most part, it doesn't let go until like the very end, where they do finally defeat Unicron by unleashing the power of the Autobot Matrix. You know, and they get a new leader in the form of Hot Rod, who becomes Optimus Prime, and then that's how the movie ends. And then the next season of the TV show picks up exactly where the movie leaves off at. And then again, if you follow the TV show, the rest is history, right? But overall, I just want to sit here and just have a number discussion about this movie. It's an all-time favorite of mine, and I'm hoping, you know, those of you who watch or listen to our channel, I hope you've probably seen this movie and you like it too. If not, you know, give it a chance. You might like it. To me, it's still the definitive Transformers movie. Although I'd have to give the Bumblebee movie that was out a few years ago its props. But other than that, this one's the definitive one. And I would recommend you start with that one. With that said, thank you for tuning into the channel. And please drop a like, subscribe. You know, it really motivates us and helps our channel out to provide you all things movies, cult movies, and classics. Until the next time, later.